Welcome to Grime Time with Rudy. This is my latest garage vlog covering the second week of February 2024. This past week I focused on finishing up installing the steering rack in Project Risky Business, our $4,000 1985 Porsche 928 barn find. In this week's video, I'm going to take you through what I needed to do to install the outer and inner tie rods, the reinstallation of the U-joint that connects the steering box to the steering shaft, a slight problem I had with one of the sway bar bolts, and then how I properly filled and bled the new steering rack before taking the car out on a shakedown cruise. Stay tuned. First thing I needed to do was clean up the steering rack boots that I bought 2 years ago. They're essentially brand new. They just have a few hundred miles on them. But because of that major leak I mentioned from the original rack, these were filled with power steering fluid, really ATF fluid. So I used Dawn dish detergent, soaked them in that in my slop sink here, and just proceeded to clean them out. And then later air dry them using compressed air. Next, what I'm unpacking here are the tie rods. These are a set of inner and outer tie rods supplied by 928s or us. I'm checking the part number. They're universal for left or right. Now here are the tie rods. When I took the old tie rods out, I made sure I counted the number of turns needed on each side and I labeled them. That way I could thread the proper number of turns. The one side was 16 and the other was 19. And you can see me backing out this first one and starting over and then properly counting the numbers. As the shakedown crew said, I have very little pulling and the car tracks fairly well, so it's really close. One of the most difficult things to do was putting in the cleaned boots onto the steering rack, and I think I may have screwed up here. I think in hindsight I probably should have put these, I should have put the outer tie rods in and then put these on, and I'll show why here in a minute. But I was using some of my interior trim tools to spread these boots onto the rack, and then I had to use a pick tool finally to stretch this enough very, very carefully so I didn't tear it. And you see where my left hand is the slot where that side of the boot fits into. So it's a matter of just getting it around on both sides and pulling it on. And finally, I got it into position and stretched it over. Procedure's the same on the other side. So now I'm compressing it so I can get access to the threaded side of that rack. This is the passenger side, and now unfortunately my arm's in the way. It's a bad angle. You'll see here in a minute. I'm actually, in my left hand is the inner tie rod, the brand new one. And there, now you can see it. Now that I've got it into place, I'm holding back the boot. And I'm threading that in by hand. Yeah, there it is. And right where my right hand is where the nut for that is where you turn it. It's a 32 millimeter nut. And I also, what you didn't see was I put orange Loctite. Unfortunately, my camera was not cooperating focus-wise, and I started trying to put the boot back over the nut, just wasn't working. Now in this shot, you see I have the floor jack underneath the outer tie rod. Why I do that is I put just enough pressure on the tie rod so that it sits up. Most ball joints have a taper to them, and rather than try to press it up, I just put enough tension on with my racing jack. It's got a rubber bottom, so it's not going to damage the ball joint. But just enough pressure that the ball joint won't turn as I put the nut. Similar, here's a better shot where you see just enough pressure to hold the tie rod in place. And now I can just go to town, cranking down on that nut. Now that I had all the tie rods in place, you see me, I'm torquing all of the bolts down for that plate that holds the rack in place. And as I do each one, I mark them. Couldn't find my white paint marker, so I had to use a red Sharpie this week, but most of the time you'll see white paint all over the car. In fact, if you look at the engine mounts above it, you see the red dots from last year. Here's a shot of the steering knuckle. Now I put it on last week, but I needed to get new nuts. These use a nylon lock nut, so every time theoretically you take this out, which I hope is never again, you have to put these in. Now the factory part is I believe it's about 2 inches long, 2 bolts, and it's only threaded on maybe the last inch. These I had to buy at a local hardware store, and they're threaded all the way through. So it took a little bit to do that, and that's what you see me doing here. I'm actually turning it down, but now I'm putting the nylon nut, which is a one-time use nut. And I actually now in this shot, I rotated the tires ever so slightly and put this on. So I'm cheating a little bit. I actually did this after I put the wheels on. What do you see me doing here? That is what I'm inserting is a tap, threaded tap. That is the flange for the sway bar bushing holder. And I noticed when I started taking the rack apart on this car that for some reason the bolt was missing. So either I didn't get it threaded right, and it's not like me to leave a bolt missing on a suspension part. So the only thing I could think of is I did not get it threaded properly, thought I had it in tight, and driving around it must have loosened. I noticed last summer when I was driving it, in certain situations when I would turn, there would be a thunk when the wheel returned, and it had to be this. So when I went to put the bolt in, I noticed it just wasn't grabbing. And I noticed that some of the threads at the very bottom of this welded in nut were just not clean, and the bolt couldn't get a bite. So here I am putting a tap in, and now I've got the holder on it, and I didn't show it, but I put some cutting fluid on it, and ever so slowly just chase the threads in that flange nut to clean them up and reestablish them. Once I did that, I aligned the top nut you can't see on the back side, and I just started slowly bolting these in both sides until they were torqued properly. And you can see the bolt coming through there. That's actually another bolt I had to buy at a big box store, but it's the correct threading. It's a little bit longer, but you can see it goes through there's plenty of clearance there, so it's not an issue. So now I'm ready to, with everything bolted, torqued, I'm ready to fill the reservoir. This takes Dexron 2, and I still had some left over from a year or so ago. Now, it's a very difficult shot. I'm trying to get it here, but you'll see it here in just a second. Ever so slightly, you can see bubbles are in there. It's a lot foamier than what this shot turned out, but there was definitely air in the system as you would expect. So the procedure is, while the car's front wheels are still jacked up with the engine running and the cap off of the power steering pump, you slowly turn the wheel. You don't want to put too much pressure at the end of each side. But I just kept doing this. The last thing you want to do, you see me checking after each one, is making sure that the fluid isn't low. Because if it gets low, or too low, then you'll get air, you'll introduce air into the system again. You got to start all over. So I was able to put just enough in, keep it going, and just checking, still a little bit of air in it. And there you see, again, that's light, that's not, there's no bubbles now. So now with that done, I can put the wheels onto the car, take the jacks, take it off the front jack stands that I had it. And we were ready for a shakedown cruise. We had a bit of a spring thaw here in central Jersey, so it's a nice day to take this out. Okay. Obviously, biggest thing is the steering wheel right now is now out of alignment, so I think we'll be okay if I fix that. Okay, I think steering feels good. All I got to do is just fix this, but I think I'm going to have to take this off again because of the odometer at some point. So I'm in no hurry to do that, but that's where we're at. And then finally, here's a shot of, I wanted to make sure all of my connections look good after driving around a little bit. No leaks, either at the banjo nuts for the rack where the fluid comes in, or in the thing. No funky noises. Everything looks good. That's really all I had time for this week, but it was good progress. The car runs great, and that gets you motivated. When the car's running well, it gets you motivated to do other things on it. So that's the latest and greatest from the past week. If you enjoyed this video, I encourage you to press the like button. And if you haven't done so already, I really encourage you to subscribe. Both of those activities help the channel grow. Over the past day, we just achieved 1,800 subscribers. So we're well on our way to hitting 2,000 very soon. So thank you for watching. I encourage you to check out our main website, guyswithrides.com, the only dealer-free marketplace for classic car enthusiasts. It's not only an auction site, but I do blog about cars 6 days a week. So I encourage you to check that out and subscribe to my email. So thank you for watching, and we'll check back real soon. Have a great day.